Part of it, L'Jarius Sneed tweaked his ankle a little bit. Trey Smith hurt his pec a bit. I think we're okay here with that part. Listen, my heart goes out to the people in Florida for what they had to put up with here with the hurricane. So, and that also is part of Tampa's situation. I mean, there was a big threat there, and the Bucs had to travel a long way for Todd to get his guys ready to go. When they're driving back and forth is really something. So he's done a heck of a job with this group here. I think the Bucs are very lucky to have him. Special teams, I thought stepped up today. Started with Lamons and the fumble that took place. Matt Wright stepping in, which is a real tribute to Brett Veach and his group. I was proud of the offensive line for the job that they did. They had a certain mindset about them, and they came out and presented that for 4 quarters. Patrick, Kelsey, Marquez, who am I missing? Juju, and then those 2 runners, man. Really 3 runners. They bared down and really did a nice job. Which is big. You play this group and time of possession ends up being a major league thing. You don't want Tom to have that ball too long and for too many snaps. However, our defense, Spags had a nice plan for him. They're very talented. They were able to get their receivers back, and I'm sure that's they're going to keep getting better as it goes on. So when they have more time to work with one another. But listen, all in all, when you can get 3 phases working in the right direction, it's normally a good thing for you. And tonight was a good thing. So with that, time's yours.
Coach, obviously, playoffs, we played the game well. Defensively, great to hold it to 3 yards of
Yeah, our guys did. It starts up when you play a good football team. It always starts up front, and so you give tribute to the guys up front. You give tribute to the linebackers and safeties tackling, along with the corners. They're involved with that too. So I thought we tackled well for the most part, and we executed the game plan, which was good. Spags and the coaches put a lot of time into that. The players believed in it, and they executed it. And against Tom, in that crew that they have, you've got to be spot on. So they're going to score some points. They're good, but you got to be spot on against them.
217 total yards against a top 5 defense. What kind of message do you think, especially coming off of weeks the way you played in weeks?
Yeah.
What kind of message are you sending out?
Yeah. So Herbie, listen, we stunk it up last week. We all knew that. We admitted it to you. We didn't play the way we should play, and not that the Colts aren't a good football team, but you don't do the things that we did and expect to win the football game. And we're still in the battle for it, but. Yeah, you can't do those things. So the guys cleaned it up today, which is important. If this becomes a ongoing issue, that you're not going to win a lot of games. And so it was important that the guys put their foot down and did what they did. My hat goes off to them for that effort.
Andy, you've seen more football than anybody. Have you ever seen Mahomes past CEH in the end zone where he loses the rush?
No.
And spins around and just kind of shotguns it?
No, that one wasn't in the playbook. I can't remember what the play was. I was so excited about that one, man. I mean, but it wasn't going to him. It wasn't going to the back. Not that way, at least.
Coach, all 3 of your tight ends scored a touchdown today. Kelsey with the 16-yard touchdown, Gray with a 2 run, and Jody. All 3 of your tight ends are contributing and scoring like this. Where does that put your offense at another level?
Well, it's important that those guys have all been around here, and so they know what's expected of them. We kind of had that going for a couple weeks last year, and then Jody got hurt. So, we expect them to play at that level, and that to have your bigs be able to do that, your big receivers do that, and then for Juju and Marquez and Sky to come in and do what they did. They all had big plays, and Kelsey had that was also a nice catch that he had down the middle. You don't see that very often. The one behind him down, he's a heck of a football player. Yeah, just the fact that he knew where he was spinning to was good enough for me. And to be able to get it off and then complete it. And for 25 to get his feet in was good too. I mean, there wasn't a lot of room there. So, no, he's had a lot of phenomenal plays, and I always remind the coaches, don't take it for granted, man. Those things, and I probably say the same thing to our media here, just that's special. And so you enjoy every one of those, man, every one of them. That's, you just don't see that very often.
All right, thank you.
All right, good.
Good morning from Kansas City, and good morning from Tampa, Florida, where Jesse Newell, Herbie Teope, and Sam McDowell have joined us to discuss the Chiefs on SportsBeat Live. This is the show where we talk Kansas City Chiefs, and as daybreak approaches on the Florida Gulf Coast, I wanted to catch up with these guys about the 41-31 Chiefs victory over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Heck of a win. Let's get right into it, guys, and talk about I want to talk about the lead up into this game before the game, because I listened to the post-game press conferences and wanted to know exactly what role motivation played in this game, whether it was last week's Colts game, the talk from Shaq Barrett about the Chiefs' offensive line, or even going back 2 years ago to the Super Bowl. What, if anything, did the Chiefs carry with them in terms of a motivational energy into this game, and did it play a factor? Sam, we'll start with you.
Can you hear me, Blair? There's like a fake concert going on back here at 1 a.m. Tampa time. I think we're past curfew. To answer your question, I think, okay, yeah, well, the music stopped for, 10 seconds, Jesse, we think? I don't know. If you see Jesse and I look back, we don't know what's going on behind us. I think the answer is a lot of motivation, and in different facets. The Shaq Barrett comments, obviously, I mean, talking through the guys in the locker room after the game, and, you kind of hear some stuff that they didn't want to spill out before the game. And, I noticed a moment after the game when Andy Reid went over and shook hands with Patrick Mahomes, with 6 people, Patrick Mahomes and all 5 starting linemen. And I thought they were the key to the game tonight, even though Mahomes was sacked 3 times. I just thought they set the tone in the first quarter. And that speaks to your question, Blair. I mean, they had more motivation than anybody. But Patrick Mahomes answered a really interesting answer to Vahe's question. I know he's going to join the show later, but he asked him if the Super Bowl played a factor, and he basically answered that he didn't anticipate that it would, but he walked in the stadium and said, man, I want to win here. We heard Clyde Edwards-Helaire say that the locker room was blurry last time he was in there because he was so damn teary-eyed. Listened to the same music he did last time. So, yeah, I definitely think that as much as these guys tried to put that off to the side during the week, we heard tonight, being here in Tampa, that, it trickled throughout the locker room all week.
What do you think, Herbie? You were there for this. Actually, you weren't there for the Super Bowl, as I recall, but you helped cover the game. And These guys, especially offensive linemen, they never say much. And for whatever reason, this Chiefs offensive line's a little bland when you talk to them. Creed Humphrey, Joe Tooney, they're just Trey Smith. They don't bring a lot of colorful responses to questions. But I thought they made a pretty loud statement tonight.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Whoa, now I'm echoing.
Sound good on this end.
There we go. Yeah, I think if anything, their actions spoke louder than any words they could have said. And you're right. They're not ones who are very colorful when you talk to them. They always answer with a lot of cliches. But what you saw out there tonight was a pure, old-fashioned ass whooping. Okay, when the offense puts up 417 total yards, 189 of that coming on the ground, that's the front five imposing their will on what was a top 5 defense. Okay, the Buccaneers entered this game allowing the league best 9 points per game. How many points did the Chiefs put up? 41. Expect that average to skyrocket, and a lot of that is because football games are won in the trenches, and we know that from the Super Bowl matchup. That was one of the biggest storylines. This game's going to be won in the trenches. The Chiefs offensive line flipped the script this time around. They dominated, and that's the reason why the Chiefs came out and just completely ran roughshod over the Buccaneers defense.
Jesse, you're a numbers
Can
guy.
I was just gonna say, can we address the comment about the losing the steam in the fourth quarter?
Yeah.
Like, this is a really good Tampa Bay defense. And if the Chiefs win 3 out of 4 quarters the way they won 3 out of 4 quarters, like, you will take that. I mean, Herbie just said it. 9 points a game in 3 weeks. And the Chiefs just did that to him. And, yeah, Mahomes got careless with the pass in the fourth quarter. I mean, it was not a perfect 4 quarters, but, my God, they put up 41 points tonight. I mean, the offense had its best game, I think, of the season tonight.
Yeah, easily. I mean, look, the first 8 possessions, not counting the kneel down at the end of the first half, the Chiefs go 5 touchdowns, 2 field goals, and they might have scored on that 8th possession, except Clyde Edwards-Helaire dropped the pass or it hit him in the helmet or whatever it was on a really sound 4th down play call, I thought. So, but Jesse, I wanted to throw this number at you. I saw this after the game, and I haven't had a chance to verify it, but since we're talking about it and not writing about it, I'm going to put it out there. 18 first down plays, rushing plays for the Chiefs on first down plays, they had 18 rushes and averaged 5.7 yards on those plays. That's a pretty impressive number.
Yeah, it goes back into what we've been talking about with the O-line and how this team was just a completely different team than a week ago when it looked like, okay, Orlando Brown is battling a knee injury. He doesn't look like himself. Trey Smith is battling an ankle injury. He doesn't look like himself. And they were, again, the maulers today. And I don't also want to overlook, I think probably part of I'm just not so much into like the motivation, not motivation thing most times. Like, we hear a lot about trap games. I don't think in those terms usually. I'm like, they're professionals. They're trying to win. They try to win every game. But, you see a game like this compared to a game like last week, and it does make you wonder. I mean, the Chiefs have this playbook they opened up today. Their running game was great with their offensive line to start with. Andy Reid went back to a lot more under center runs, which is not something we've seen from them. A lot of the pulling the guard and the tackle that they do, sometimes the center as well. Downhill power running game, they did not attach RPOs to those as much, so those linemen could get downfield, be the maulers that they wanted to be. And then we saw a bunch of the quick passing game from Patrick Mahomes. He was kind of last week, didn't really trust his protection, so he was scrambling all around, trying to make plays out of structure, and it didn't go so well for the Chiefs. Today, back foot throw. His average depth of target was not very long, but it was just efficient. He was finding Kelsey, he was finding Juju Smith-Schuster, and then when they had their big shots, it was the fake the quick one and go down the field as he did to MVS a couple times. So, this was a masterclass from a lot of different areas, but we can't overlook that Andy Reid had a great week. Now, he probably had 2 bad weeks before this one, if we're being completely honest. I know that one against the Chargers was a short week, but, I see a lot of these comments like, oh, a win is a win, and they maybe stalled in the fourth quarter. Guys, this sort of performance, they can beat anybody. Like if you come into this building and beat the Bucs like this, I know most people thought they were Super Bowl contender coming in anyway, but this is a Super Bowl contending, Super Bowl winning type of performance today. And these Chiefs are as good as anybody out there. So, the Bills have kind of been up and down now the last couple weeks. I know they pulled out their victory today, but this Chiefs team, how they played tonight against the Bills on a neutral, that'd be a really damn good game.
Yeah, if you're one of these people that think that Andy Reid holds stuff back in games and maybe tries to get by a game without using all of his stuff, like last week and tonight are going to be the two games you point to toward as your evidence, because we didn't see a lot of the third down stuff that we saw, or we didn't see a lot of the third down stuff we saw tonight a week ago in Indianapolis. They converted 11 of their initial 13 third down attempts. The last 2 weeks combined, they were 7 out of 22. That was a staple of their offense under Patrick Mahomes for the last 3 or 4 years. And it returned tonight. And it wasn't, it was atypical. We saw them pull the option back out. Like, that returned to the playbook. And Jesse thinks he caught that might have been an audible at the line of scrimmage. It may have been just shifting it to the other side, or it may have been calling an entire new play. But, that was a play that I didn't know that we'd see again. He got hurt on that play against Cleveland, a couple of years ago in the playoffs. So I think Jesse was right when he said, as much as we're going to talk about Patrick Mahomes' revenge game and, the offensive line's revenge game, I think you can talk about the running backs. But Andy Reid got his butt whooped by Todd Bowles last time he faced him, and he just outclassed him and out-schemed him tonight.
We've seen that happen over the time that Andy Reid's been in Kansas City, veteran coach going up against someone who is not so veteran. Bowles has been a head coach, but hasn't had many years at that with that experience, and so that's not uncommon. That 11th first down at 11 out of 13, that 11th one was that great catch by Kelsey over the middle where he was sliding on a just a really nice play. There are a lot of really nice plays, and I know Vahe is going to join us in a little bit. I hope he's writing about Mahomes, because we'll talk about that with him. But two things that I thought were pretty critical to the setting the trend for this game, and one was the very first moment of the game. And we saw what happened in Indianapolis last week when the first return opportunity was a muff punt that the Sky Moore dropped and the Colts turned into a short field touchdown. Well, today it was even sooner, right? Opening kickoff, and Chris Lamons, am I pronouncing that right, Herbie? Lamons, spelled Lamons, pronounced Lamons, forces the fumble. Who was it who picked it up, Herbie?
I think he went to the 20th ranked school in the country right now, Kansas State, Elijah Lee.
That's right.
Well, I know he didn't go to the 17th ranked school. That's all I know.
He's actually from. I'm gonna one up everybody. He actually is from the Blue Springs area. Let's keep that in mind too.
There we go. Vahe has joined us. So look, it was a very nice piece of fortune for the Chiefs. And so less than a minute into the game, after kicking off, they're up 7-0. And we just talked about the motivation factor and the and how many things went right for the Chiefs. I got to think that played into confidence and just feeling really good about yourself, getting that kind of break or creating that kind of break and taking advantage. And then the other play I wanted to mention before we get too far into Mahomes and Kelsey and everybody else was L'Jarius Sneed. And I don't know if I didn't know if Sneed came to the podium or what he might have said about that play, but I don't think the defense had I thought they were very good. I would call it wasn't like that stretch last year when they were holding the Cowboys to 9 points and the Packers to 7, that sort of thing. But gosh, that play was the biggest defensive play of the game. And if there was a play of the game, a turning point-ish sort of play, I thought it was that one. Anybody agree with that?
Absolutely, and I think Jesse is writing about him.
Okay.
So I'll let him take it over. But I thought it was the biggest play in the game after the Clyde Edwards-Helaire drop. Like, that was a moment where you thought if the Bucs are going to get back in the game, now's the time. And then, like I said, I'll let Jesse take over the intricacies of that play.
Yeah, and real quick, Blair, you talk about the special teams plays to start. I mean, by expected points, Sky Moore's play handed the Colts 6.5 points. This play, I think it was Rashad. I'm forgetting his last name. The kid from the Kansas City area. He handed the Chiefs 6 points. It was worth 6. The biggest plays of the last 2 games were fumbles on special teams plays, which is crazy. You know, the studies out there show us that actually special teams aren't a third of the game; they're more like a ninth of the game. Well, that ninth of the game made a huge impact on the last 2 contests for the Chiefs, one good and one bad. But I know L'Jarius Sneed, I pointed this out on Twitter and the video. If you go back to watch the very beginning, it's really interesting what L'Jarius Sneed does. Like, he's kind of in the slot corner. He's like grabbing his helmet like he's maybe, I don't know, it's not fitting him right. And then he kind of adjusts his gloves and he backs up a little bit. And then like 2 seconds later, he takes off towards Tom Brady and kind of gets down when he does it. So some really clever footwork on the blitz, some really clever trying to deke a Hall of Fame quarterback, most considered the greatest of all time. And he did it. He was able to outgrade the GOAT, if you will, on that particular play. So really interesting stuff. And again, that goes into film study, but also technique and working to get better at your craft. And L'Jarius has become a weapon for them out there, being able to blitz and come up with those game-changing plays you talked about, Blair. He had the one against the Colts. He obviously had this one against the Bucs. And outside of Chris Jones, I think he's on his own stratosphere when it comes to Chiefs players defensively and kind of their impact. Would he be their second best defensive player? I'd probably argue for it so far this season.
Blair, I just want to go ahead.
He's leading the team in sacks, but go ahead, Vahe.
No, I was just going to chime in with what was pretty interesting about everything Jesse just said. He was observing and stating in real time in the press box. It's just a really great reminder of what the discerning eye can see, and tip of the cap to Jesse for his alertness to that. And just to go back briefly too to the special teams plays being so huge. Not only were they pivotal, they were pivotal in the first series of the game. Each time. And Jesse also pointed this out, but literally the first play of the game after that horrendous special teams effort last week is just the opposite. And that's some juice that is, it's hard to quantify, but that's pretty big, especially when you're, next series, you're driving 79 yards.
Today was anti-juice because this whole place was ready to go crazy. It was Sunday Night Football, Tom Brady versus Mahomes, and you get the opening kickoff, and then you fumble it and lose the ball. And here's our concert, everybody. Can everybody hear this? But you lose. I mean, everybody out here is jacked. They're ready for the game, and all of a sudden, it's just like, oh, you don't get the football, and 2 plays later, Mahomes scores. Oh, you're down 7-0, and yeah, the air was going out of the balloon before this thing really even started.
So Herbie Chaz asks, with that O-line, why is it so difficult to basically to get a yard or two at the goal line? It's always hard to get a yard or two at the goal line, but for the Chiefs over the Andy Reid era, it's at least in the Patrick Mahomes era, it's been a bit of a struggle. That's why we see so much trickeration down there, and we saw it again tonight with a play that didn't get in the end zone. That was the first time I'd seen Jerick McKinnon take the underhand pass at the goal line, but the one that did, I thought, was a pretty neat trick, if you want to call it that, the Noah Gray touchdown. So listen, it's kind of by any means necessary, isn't it? When you're in the goal line, you've got to, especially against a defense like Tampa Bay's.
Especially because you don't have a lot of space to operate and everything is confined in there. But you're right. This is something that has been with Andy Reid, not just here in Kansas City. You got to go all the way back to his time in Philadelphia. We all know Andy Reid. There are 2 things that he's always going to get criticized for. One, his time management, and it's not just in Kansas City. This is a carryover from Philadelphia, as well as his inability to consistently commit to running the football. And that's something that has been with him throughout his head coaching career. But today they found ways to score. You're right. They do utilize a lot of trickeration, the trick plays, the underhand tosses from Patrick Mahomes, but it works. Going to Noah Gray's play, that was Blake Bell's play, and you heard them talk about in post-game press conference with Patrick Mahomes. Gray was saying, hey, I used to do this at Duke, so let me try it here. They went back and watched the tape, and sure enough, he did do it. So they allowed him to do it here, and it was short enough, and he was able to bull his way into the end zone.
Yeah, got a linebacker out of position in the process. So I'm not going to say he scored easily, but it was a no doubt touchdown for Noah Gray. It was kind of fun to see. So all right, we've gotten this far really without talking about Patrick Mahomes and his game. A milestone in one sense. He surpassed the 20,000 yards, career yards passing. The youngest player to do that. Did I read the graphic right? Youngest player to in the fewest amount of games, I should say.
Correct. Fastest to do it in less than 71 games.
Okay, and then well, I just think the touchdown will be one of the top 5 Mahomes to this date. One of his top 5 touchdown passes to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Not just because of what happened when he got to the 2, but how he got to the 2, what he had to do to escape and spin, and just a remarkable play. Vahe, what did Patrick say about just that play in particular?
Yeah, it was funny, Blair, because I asked him specifically about that play, and we all know this, right? He's particularly insightful and brilliant on these sorts of things, like seeing it through his lens. You almost feel like you're getting a little GoPro on his helmet when he describes it. But what was funny about this was he was talking about he left out the bisque. He left out the most important part. Left out the best part. He talked it through and talked about flicking it to Clyde, but he left out the spin. So I interjected and said, well, what about the spin? And he had been thinking about running until he made the spin. And he decided, apparently in mid-spin, that now he needed to pass again because he wasn't going to have the momentum to run. So in the time he's processing all this, I mean, we've taken 25 more times talking about it right now than it took him to process this and 74 other things going on. And it will never cease to amaze me about the kind of magic box in his head. And I look, there's moments where it turns out he's not perfect, right? But there's moments where you wonder what he was thinking. But nearly always, if you could sit there and talk to him about every play of every game, you would understand it. He would take you through it. And really, thank goodness for Chiefs fans, we can't fathom all that he can do. It's just a never-ending phenomenon.
I like that thought. It's almost like a really good golfer who can relay every single shot of his day. And I think you're right about Patrick Mahomes. If you just sat down with him on film, every single play, he'd have, there's a story for every one of them, for every single one of them. And, there were a couple today that were, in addition to the touchdown earlier in the game, it was one of his third down completions. I think this was to Juju Smith-Schuster, where he was about to be sacked, spun around, and just flipped the pass out there. And that was I thought that was typical Mahomes, which is amazing for anybody else.
It's funny, Blair. We would be totally focusing on that, or we would talk about that more if not for other things that eclipsed it, right? I mean, but that was pretty special. I think that was on the second drive of the game. Was that the one that made it 14-3? It set up that drive to keep going, 3rd and 1, 3rd and short. And he was pretty much in the grasp. And look, there's something I think it's also interesting about Patrick that I think all of us have become acutely aware of, and many Chiefs followers are. Those who are, I don't know if you call them as detractors, but there's people out there that seem to think that, he's just making it up. And he does improvise for sure, but he is seldom reckless. Now, he was a little careless on that interception. I don't know what was going on there. It was later in the game, and it'd been interesting to talk to him about that. But that play, you don't see him give the ball away in those sorts of situations very often at all, right? Those don't look high percentage. But again, he has a sense of where he is and a sense of the context around him that is, not anything we can relate to.
Right. So I don't know how you guys denote special plays on your notes. I always put as I'm doing play by play, I just put an exclamation point at the end of the play. And So the first one I had today was that it was 3rd and 1 at the 42, and it was 15-9 ! 4 yards. So I got a lot of exclamation points on my notes, by the way, including a couple more on that series. That was a series that also included the option run, another 3rd down play. So it was just on a night where his quarterback rating's not going to be one of his better ones. It was under 100. Jesse, what's your thought on the quarterback rating stat? I mean, do you think it accurately reflects a quarterback's game and effectiveness?
No, I mean, there's stats that are better. I mean, what's really tough about quarterback play, I think, to analyze it is that you can kind of get in all these different areas. You know what I mean? And so if one has a lower grade for the quarterback that you cheer for, and he's more of a runner, well, you say that one's garbage. When really it's like, okay, no, this one kind of is more what he does throwing football. Like the Pro Football Focus metric is usually more throwing, kind of the throws and what's expected. And so if Patrick Mahomes has a really good talent base out around him and he makes some really good reads, but very standard throws, he's going to be ranked lower in that one. ESPN has one, the QBR, where it's just all stats. And I think that one's better than that one's better than the QB rating. But again, I mean, that one's just, you can't tell on some of these things exactly the context that goes into it. And some of the nuance, kind of like this 2-yard pass that we're talking about, looks a lot different to our eyes than it does, the raw stats when you open up a spreadsheet. So I think we're all trying to get better information. All these stats are, well researched and well done, but QB rating kind of one of those old ones that's been grandfathered in, and not horrible. It was better at the time than what we had previously, but there's better ones out there. None of them are perfect, and I think you try to take a little piece of all of them and try to come up together with what you think, all these complete quarterbacks are. All I know really is that this particular game shows it again. I mean, the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, and he's one of the elites, and you've seen other teams when they don't have an elite quarterback, how much everybody else has to contribute and kind of make that better. And that's not where the Chiefs are at, because obviously they have a guy in there that can do everything. And, it's funny because we hear the criticism of backyard football or whatever the case may be. That's a nightmare for defensive coordinators, because he can make plays in structure. He can make plays in the pocket, but you can defend him perfectly and do exactly what you want to do, and he still makes that 2-yard touchdown pass. That has to keep them up at night when you're trying to defend this team, because you have done your job. You have schemed them well. You have got him out of the pocket. You have kept him from the goal line. And then he spins around in a pirouette and lofts the ball to the back of the end zone and does something you've never seen before. I mean, that you can call it a criticism. It's not a criticism. That is Patrick Mahomes at his absolute best, because he is turning literally nothing into something. And that's something that basically no other quarterback in the history of this league has ever been able to do.
Something else I like about that play in particular, by the way, I think the next gen stats number on that was he ran 39.5 yards before he threw it, which brings to mind the 479 yards or whatever it was he ran around behind the line of scrimmage in the ill-fated 31-9 loss here in the Super Bowl. And it's so maybe it's a little apt that there's a little serpentining for the greater good here for the Chiefs.
So Jesse mentioned backyard football. I got to give Chris Collinsworth credit tonight. He had a great note, and people who watch the game know what I'm talking about. On the touchdown pass to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Collinsworth said, it's like a father playing with kids. That you just dad dominating and juking his kids and ends up scoring the touchdown. I thought that was a pretty apt comparison. So Victor says he's walking around the streets of Breckenridge, Colorado, and in the last few days he's worn Chiefs jerseys and Broncos jerseys there, and I guess especially after today, since Broncos lost to the Raiders. And Dan, we don't often do this, but Dan wants to know who's going to win between the Chiefs and the Raiders next Monday night. The reason I bring that up is tonight I had the Bucs beating the Chiefs in a low-scoring game, so I was dead on this one. Chiefs won a high-scoring game. So how about very first thoughts on Chiefs Raiders next week? Herbie, did you get to see any of Broncos Raiders today?
I did watch some of it up in the press box TV, but there's just no way. Yeah, I think last week we just last week's loss against the Colts, it was a head scratcher. And you know, the team we saw today is the Chiefs team we thought they were going to be coming in here, and they did it against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road. And now they're going back home to GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. So I just cannot see them losing that game to the Raiders.
I can't either. No, I can't either.
No, me neither.
The raw math is going to say that Chiefs are a 9-point favorite, 10-point favorite in that one. I mean, they're not going to hurt themselves with this performance. They're going to be up there with the Bills as one of the top two teams that people are betting on and figuring are the best two teams in the NFL. So, I mean, 9 or 10 points, that's a lot of room for error, a lot of margin for error to potentially have a down game and still win. And that's the underrated story of the season, I think, for the Chiefs. Not only have they had games like this game, the Arizona game, where they look like one of the best teams in the NFL, but the AFC West is not what we thought. So, I mean, you win this game against the Raiders, you go to 2-0 in the AFC West, you have a win over the Chargers, and the Chargers are all beat up. The Broncos lost today to the Raiders, which is a great result for the Chiefs, at least how the season started. All of a sudden, this thing is really shaping up for the Chiefs to win another AFC West and be in the driver's seat already at this early point in the season.
I told you earlier, I didn't like the Mahomes interception. I like the fact that he went to 3-3 lifetime against Tom Brady. And I think that there are only 2 or 3 other quarterbacks that have had as many wins or more wins in a head-to-head matchup against Tom Brady. And I think that's cool for Mahomes to not have a losing record against the 7-time Super Bowl winning champ. And here's your homework assignment. Find out how many consecutive victories the Chiefs have against NFC teams in the regular season. I think I know the last time they lost to one, and it hasn't been recently. So the last time they actually lost to an NFC team was on the field where you are, but that was in the Super Bowl. But in the regular season, it's been quite a while since they've lost to an NFC team. And with that, you guys have more work to do and sleep to get, and we all do. So I thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. And we'll be back at it on Thursday, talking Chiefs and setting up the Monday night game against the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't think we call them the Oakland Raiders at Las Vegas, but we'll be talking Chiefs Raiders on Thursday. Hope you join us then. Monty, you can take us out. Thank you so much for your work tonight.